What's going on, guys? It is the Coaster Battleman here, bringing you my top 10 roller coasters at Six Flags over Texas. And I haven't uploaded like a major video in a PowerPoint format in a while, but here's my top 10 roller coasters at Six Flags over Texas. I went to this park quite some time ago, kind of at the end of the summertime, and this is a pretty good park. They have some really good coasters, and their top three is just underrated, by the way. And let's move on. So, number 10 is La Vibora, and this is the bobsled at Over Texas. And this is basically the first. This is basically a step up from their mine train coasters and their kid coaster. And this is a decent coaster. You have some pretty good turns throughout the ride, but what kills this coaster from being higher, which I wish this coaster was a bit better for me, was that the mid-course brake runs were really brutal and they really hurt. But the good news is there's no over-the-shoulder restraint smashing my head, so at least that was a thing. But you could get kind of jolted around through the mid-course brake runs throughout the ride and just brake runs in general. But the turns are decent, and that's kind of all that matters about this coaster. Plus, the color scheme is pretty good, and what was convenient about this coaster was that it had a single rider line, and I basically waited 5 minutes for this instead of probably like an hour because of how bad the capacity was. So that is a plus. Like the queue line was probably as big as a small portion of Raging Bull's line or Titan's line, and that probably would have been like a 15-minute wait instead of an hour for that in the normal line. But well, La Vibora, solid color scheme, pretty good turns throughout the ride, so it's a decent ride. Number 9 is Judge Roy Scream, and, well, this is a decent wooden coaster. It's not amazing, but it's not horrible either. I think it's pretty solid, and it has an okay drop, some okay hills, and according to my friends, Caleb and Daniel, shout out to those guys, they told me that Judge Roy, like, sometimes you will get a decent to good ride on this, and then more likely than not, you're going to get a bad ride. So, Judge Roy, I actually got a decent ride on it. I didn't really get too much airtime. I think I only got, like, one airtime moment, but this is a decent coaster. It's a nice classic coaster, a nice classic icon, but it does take up a big plot of land, like, which has tons of potential for, like, a big B&M or something. But Judge Roy, it's a classic, and it's definitely an icon to Over Texas. Number 8 is Pandemonium, and I've ridden the Six Flags St. Louis version, and it's a clone. I'm not going to go too much in detail. It's a fun spinning coaster, and I know I didn't ride the Pandemonium at Over Texas because we didn't really have too much time, because I only spent a day at this park. But Pandemonium, I've ridden the St. Louis version, so I basically have ridden all the Pandemoniums, and they're smooth rides, they're pretty fun, they have some good spinning to them, and overall I really enjoy them. Number 7 is Runaway Mountain. This is a family coaster I really wanted to ride here, because, according to my friends again, they said this coaster is pretty intense, despite it being a small coaster, and it's an Intamin, so I could see why it's pretty intense. And this coaster has some decent theming, and I've heard that in the summertime that this coaster can get pretty long lines due to the fact that it's indoors and because of the air conditioning. So Runaway Mountain, it's quite a solid coaster, but unfortunately I didn't get to ride it, so I can't really judge where I put it, so I'm just going to leave it here at the number 7 spot. Number 6 is Batman the Ride, and it's very, 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 very similar to all the other Batman clones. The color scheme is basically your standard Batman the Ride color scheme, and you have the usual Batmobile and the tunnel to the station area and Batman the Ride. I know that I was really, really close to riding Batman the Ride, and unfortunately I couldn't get to ride it because it broke down at the last second. And then I tried to get back on, but the line just seemed to keep getting too long. So unfortunately I couldn't get on Batman the Ride at Over Texas. But the only difference, according to my friends, between this version and Great America's version is that it has a bit more headbanging than Great America's. So It's a bit worse, but it's still pretty good. Number 5 is the Joker, and my experience on Joker was fantastic, and I flipped like 10 times. Like, it was really intense, and the flipping was super powerful and really good. It's a short ride, and you feel very disoriented, which is actually a pretty cool feeling. But this is a really good coaster. I really enjoy the Joker. And over Texas is Joker. Like, I remember the standard line for this was, the line was like an hour wait, and it was really long, and the single rider line was probably only like 5 minutes, so saved a ton of time using the single rider line. I recommend to use them at Over Texas. So, Joker, solid coaster. I really enjoyed it. It's a clone, but I still think this is a fun ride, despite it being so short and a clone. Number 4 is Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast, and Mr. Freeze, it got really, really close to the top 3, and this is a fun coaster. The backwards launch is really fun. You have a really good top hat and a vertical spike as well, and you basically do the cycle twice, backwards then forwards, formerly forwards and backwards. But as Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast, this coaster is very fun, very phenomenal. It's not as smooth as Six Flags St. Louis's Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast, and the color scheme is not as good in my opinion, but I still think it's a really fun coaster. Number 3 is Shockwave, and this is the classic Schwarzkopf looping coaster at Over Texas, and it has definitely held its ground for years. And this is a classic coaster being built in 1978, and it's definitely one of the original thrilling coasters at Over Texas, and this coaster is really fun. It has a really good drop, some very intense vertical loops, some intense airtime hills and turns throughout the ride. And I've said this before, Schwarzkopf was Intamin before Intamin because of how intense their coasters are. Like Shockwave and Mindbender. And yeah, Shockwave, it had some pretty underrated airtime, like especially if you're in the back row and you're not stapled really that much, you will get some crazy, it is a little jerky though, but some really crazy airtime on the drops and airtime hills. And this ride is just a really fun coaster. Great airtime, great inversions. The drops are fun. It's just a good coaster, and it's a pretty long ride too. Number 2 is Titan, and this is a gargantuan coaster. This ride looks way bigger than 245 feet. In my opinion, it looks way bigger than that. It just has that feeling of looking that big. And this coaster has a massive drop. It's not that steep, but it's really big and really good. You have some really good turns throughout the ride that'll whip you around a little bit. Some really intense helixes. And there is an airtime hill after the first gargantuan turn that actually, I've heard it doesn't get airtime, but I actually got some really good airtime on that part of the ride. And I was probably out of my seat for probably like 3 or 4 seconds. Like, it was a really long airtime moment. This coaster is fantastic, and I know normally the ride will black you up, but when I rode it, I didn't really gray out or black out at all, which was really surprising. But this coaster is super fun, very intense, and it's just a really good experience riding this, especially at night. Night ride front row was phenomenal on Titan, and that was easily my best ride on it. It felt way faster, and it was just unbelievable. But number 1 is New Texas Giant. This coaster, Titan, in my opinion, has a bit of a better night ride, but New Texas Giant is the better all-around ride. It's better during the daytime than Titan, and that's what gives it number 1 and edging it out. Plus, there's just more to it. The drop is fantastic. You have some awesome bank turns as well. Some really good air times, and I know after the mid-course brake run, the ride kind of slows down, but you will get some solid airtime on those airtime hills at the end of the ride after the mid-course brake run. And that first half, you're just flying around super fast through the compact layout, and New Texas Giant is a very fun coaster. Definitely the best coaster at Six Flags Over Texas. And if you don't get stapled, you are in for a treat on this coaster because you will get some super strong airtime on this, and you will be flying out of your seat. So thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, stay tuned for more videos. Bye.